Here is the familiar version 1 of the drinking tempo forecast at the present state of my cellar with 227 bottles, telling me I have to empty the cellar at a rate of 1.6 bottles a month from now until the end of the year of maximum, which in this case happens to be 2020, and of 1.7 bottles of spirits a year from now until the end of 2040, which is my assumed year of death for planning purposes. Of course, we know nothing actually runs as planned, but except for a very few highly realized people, completely without planning, we'd end up in quite a mess. And this is version 2, which tells me that I need to empty 3.1 bottles of wine, almost twice as much as 1.6, in the year, which according to version 2 happens to be the current year, with the highest drinking pressure coming from my cellar if I follow the drinkability report of Cellar Tracker. My other videos on the subject explain that discrepancy and point out that the real maximum drinking pressure to be expected from my cellar via the drinkability report is between the maxima of the two versions of the drinking tempo forecast. And so I expect it in reality to be in for some value between 2 and 2.5 bottles per month. And at any rate, even this 3.1 bottles of wine per month wouldn't constitute a tsunami, since it is clearly a very moderate drinking tempo. So right away I know that I'm in the green zone with my cellar, and having programmed my spreadsheet months ago, it was a matter of minutes to see that result. Since this version 2 is an approximation of the future performance of the drinkability report of Cellar Tracker, we would like to know how well it approximates that performance, in particular how much it exaggerates the drinking pressure in the imminent years for the reasons mentioned in the video on version 2. To make that visible, I for once went through the ordeal of actually projecting the drinkability report for future days, namely for December 31st of each year, starting with the current year 2016, up to and including the year 2022. Once for the early bell and once for the linear maturation formula. And to avoid exhaustion, I left it at that degree of differentiation, exporting the numbers for each wine and processing them in such a way as to, based on those, get the real numbers of bottles for each wine, thus to be consumed each year from my cellar. I won't bore you to death, and to make a long story short, it was a buttload of work, took me hours and hours, and this resulting sheet looks okay because it is the result of having done and cleaned up that work. So for each year under DR, I inserted the numbers of the drinkability report, and under real, I wrote how many bottles I actually intend to open based on those numbers, since I don't open a fraction of a bottle, for instance. And those real numbers became the basis for the number of bottles to open from my cellar for each of those years, as you can see here further down on this sheet. These numbers in turn are depicted as the first 7 columns of the red graph of this comparative diagram integrated in version 2 of the drinking tempo forecast, and the rest of the red graph consists of calculated guesses which are of no further interest here. As you can see, the drinking pressure in the imminent years is reduced versus version 2 of the drinking tempo forecast. The maximum occurs 1 year later and is a bit lower, resulting in a maximum drinking tempo for the year 2017 of 2.3 bottles of wine per month, which is exactly in the expected zone between 2 and 2.5, which was suggested by the combination of version 1 of 1.6 bottles and version 2 with 3.1 bottles of wine of the drinking tempo forecast. In summary, the update of a combination of versions 1 and 2 of the drinking tempo forecast costs a couple of minutes of work and renders a very good estimation of the drinking pressure to be expected from your cellar over the years, assuming you follow the drinkability report of Cellar Tracker. On the other hand, getting the exact numbers based on the application of the drinkability report for future dates is a tedious and exhausting process which costs hours on end and then renders a result which is only slightly more precise. That difference in precision might actually have applications in special cases, but at present I'm not aware of any, except that having done that work and used the numbers in this column, which however you can get based on simple application of the drinkability report for December 31st of the current year only once for each maturation formula, had the side effect of providing me with a basic consumption plan for 2016, which along with bottles I will probably discover along the way for good measure, will force me to consume roughly 1 bottle a week on average this year, which is fine with me. The greater difficulty will be to stop my cellar growth.